Kids in America, an anthem to the freedom and culture of the United States, was a popular 1981 song by Kim Wilde. During the episode entitled Kim Wilde, in Marjane Satrapi's Persepolis, Marjane is reveling in the artifacts of Western popular culture. She's shown in one panel of the comic as mimicking the pose Kim takes in a poster. Persepolis is the story about growing up. However, it's far from being about a kid in America. Rather, it is the autobiographical story of Satrapi's childhood and young adulthood from age 10 to 24. It depicts her life in Iran during and after the Islamic Revolution. By definition, Persepolis is a Bildungsroman, a novel that focuses on the psychological and moral growth of the protagonist from youth to adulthood. The German word literally means development novel, and this literary genre has been around since the 18th century. The Bildungsroman is over 225 years old. Ironically, all the protagonists in them are so much younger. Persepolis was originally published in French in 2000/2001. The English language translation appeared a few years later in 2003/2004. To truly understand Satrapi's narrative, we must have an understanding of the context she experienced as a native Iranian. In 1908, massive oil reserves were discovered in Iran, named Persia until 1935. Oh, now I get the title of the book. Great Britain was very interested, eventually leading to this. As a result of their oil interest, Great Britain supported a military coup in 1921 and watched closely as the new leader, Reza Khan, and later his son, Reza Pahlavi, made numerous reforms. Many of the new laws and regulations created resentment among devout Muslims. For example, mosques were required to use chairs. Most men were required to wear Western clothing, including a hat with a brim. Women were encouraged to discard the hijab. Men and women were allowed to freely congregate, violating Islamic mixing of the sexes. There was a short-lived uprising in 1953 before the coup backed by the United States removed the new prime minister and reinstated Reza Pahlavi. The rapid modernization of Iranian society during the 50s and 60s further angered religious leaders. Pahlavi's intolerance of dissent led to intellectuals and leftists organizing against him as well. Pahlavi and his wife were eventually forced to flee the country. A popular religious leader stepped in, reversing many of the newly gained civil rights. Saddam Hussein in Iraq saw opportunity. They invaded to seize the valuable oil fields. This led to a war between Iran and Iraq, lasting from 1980 to 1988. The survival of the Iranian regime was dependent on the continuance of the war with Iraq. As Marjane relates to us, tied up in that survival was the execution of any opposition. Quote, naturally, the regime became more repressive. In the name of that war, they exterminated the enemy within, end quote. I distinctly remember the latter half of this war. I would have been 11 in 1988, as well as the subsequent Operation Desert Storm conflict fought against Iraq when they later invaded Kuwait. Someone thought that it was a good idea to profit from Operation Desert Storm by releasing 264 baseball cards. Davis, I'll trade you my Dick Cheney and General Colin Powell cards for your Cobra Copter. What? There's no Cobra Commander card? As we will discuss during our class meetings, Persepolis features a number of important themes. Here I just want to call attention to the theme of the impact of religious extremism on regular women and children. The first part of Persepolis ends with the war still raging, and Marjane is sent to live in Europe at the age of 14 because her outspokenness had become dangerous in the political climate. In the second half of Persepolis, she's settled in Austria and begins a new life at a boarding school. After 4 years, she returns to Iran and continues to experience the reality that, quote, freedom has a price, end quote. This price often involves the tension between individuality and the larger group. Our next video will discuss freedom as well, the freedom to teach Persepolis, versus attempts at censorship in school districts across the United States.